welcome to Philly Coco presents Side Project Spotlight, episode 26. This is a developer's journey into making cool stuff. We are your backseat drivers on this developer highway to. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Cocoa Heads community focused on Apple development that primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, and watchOS development. Philly Coco's true desire is to take you higher on your own developer journey. Whew. All right, got a little sloppy in the middle, but
Is this our first one back in on the morning schedule? Like the last few have been
we're back to
sleepy edition.
Yeah,
that's why I had to make coffee.
We're back to the reset edition. All the past ones have been a little bit wonky because of our personal schedules, but the three of us are back, and we can talk
Indeed.
more.
Although I gotta say, to begin the follow up, maybe the last episode was well received. I think it generated some conversation on the Slack. Some people, were listening to it.
Yeah.
And Zorn immediately listened to it.
Yeah, shout out to you, Zorn. Appreciate the comment. I mean, it felt when I was doing it, it felt a lot of like rambling and just random anecdotes.
Yeah. So behind the scenes, you gave me your episode, and I think I spent 2 hours editing it or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like a 20-minute thing, but I had to go. I went through and I deleted. I think I got almost every that you had. It was painful
I'm sorry.
at first to listen to, and it's not your fault. It's difficult to not say a lot when you're speaking by yourself in a monologue. Everybody does it, and you get better at it with practice. But I was listening to it, and I said, "This is too much," so I edited all that stuff out. But that's why we have a team here, so I do the editing, so that way it sounds better. So I think it had a lot of good information. So basically, I didn't want the really good stuff you had in there and the really good anecdotes and stuff to be, maybe hidden behind some minor, verbal, stuff like because that can annoy people if it's too much. So I just removed it. That way, we just had the nice lean meat of the Kotaro. I don't know. The Kotaro sandwich. the Kotaro anecdote sandwich.
I mean, but it would be kind of funny if we all had like one or two of these to spread these out. Maybe that could be a thing.
Yeah, we could do. I know we want to bring some more people on too.
Yeah.
So that'd be cool. But I think it went well. Is what I'm saying is overall, I think it was good. I thought it was a good talk. What did you think, Aaron? You like?
I didn't listen to it.
Oh, I didn't listen.
Yeah, actually, I haven't gotten a chance to listen.
That was a joke. It turned out to be true. Oh, that's
it's okay.
funny.
You weren't missing much.
No, well, yeah, I'd like to.
Anyway,
I
need
thought
to
it was.
listen to it.
You should listen to it. It's good. It has It has the classic culture anecdotes.
It's only 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's a short bite.
I mean, it was kind of like when I listened back to it, which was actually quite dreadful. Because it was like, oh man, I know I'd sound pretty bad, but it was like a one take kind of thing. And I didn't give myself any time to how sometimes maybe it's a good idea to give yourself some time to just have a rapport with your colleagues and what we kind of do sometimes. And then once you're in podcast mode, you're in podcast mode. You can kind of get yourself into that flow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like, all right, I'm gonna do this once. I only have time for it now. And I had a framework, but it was like a very loose framework of what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, I used to, when I was doing the daily cron, I was doing every day, 5 days a week, the monologues essentially. Sometimes I would just write out entire scripts. And in any case, usually I had to record it 2 or 3 times. So I was doing 5 or 10 minute episodes or something, and sometimes it would still take me an hour just to record it.
I mean,
that's how it goes.
They tell you, because I took oddly enough, when I was at Art Institute part-time, I did take a speech class where they sort of teach you this idea that you would do bullet points, and you bullet point your entire speech, so you don't, and then you rehearse it, right? You don't have to do it line for line, word for word kind of situation. You just have to have a general outline of what you're going to talk about, and then if you practice it enough, it becomes like second nature. Like it'll sound much more fluid, so you don't have to necessarily have this. You don't sound robotic, but you also don't sound like you're like some loose cannon.
Yeah,
just rambling about anything, right?
But you'll get better. I'd like that idea. Maybe we'll do some solo episodes. Maybe we can make them bonus episodes since they're short.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the reasons why, I forgot what it was. Was it might have been during Side Project Saturday or one of the other events where we had people or somebody come in who was new and was kind of the start of their own quote unquote developer journey, and just trying to figure out where to start. What books, what references,
how to get started. That was that side project. So he was wanted to become make an app developer. But that happens a lot. So over the years, and it's a common question. Maybe we should put a web page up on the site that explains.
We should do a blog.
Should do a blog. Let's bring him back.
Maybe Muhammad will help us out with that blog.
Yeah, he knows that. He knows how to blog.
He knows how to blog.
He's a really good blog.
What's the name of his blog again?
Was it TIL
with Muhammad?
Like Today I Learned.
Yeah.
It's a great blog.
Great blog.
Bringing it back. Bring them back. The blogs. Well, or but don't bring them back like the Verge did.
Oh yeah, no, not well. So here's the thing about like anytime any company decides to change their entire brand, regardless of our initial reaction, we should give ourselves some time to digest it. Yes. Because a lot of times, visually, I would argue, a good percentage of the time, we're going to hate it. It's just because it's so radically different, so completely, and you're going to question why. You're going to say, what was the reason behind it? What's the vision? I don't get it, right? But a lot of times, there's a lot of thought put into these brandings. Like, they know people are going to hate it. But the point of a brand is not necessarily for you to like the new design. It's supposed to project something about that brand that's different now.
Yeah, it definitely is projecting something. Not sure what.
I mean, but I do agree with you with this idea. Like when you looked at the Verge logo before versus the Verge logo now, it's all broken into pieces.
Yeah, they said that was on purpose. They had a whole article about like why they did the redesign. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, man, but I look at the logo and I feel like I have to cross my eyes. Like I feel like I need glasses or something. But that's not even the worst part about the redesign, though. Like it's the the lack of functionality of the website now. That's my problem. It's the colors I think are garish and the font choices are strange to me. But that's like a lot of that is, as you said, like that's like maybe get used to it. But it's like they just combined the worst parts of social media streams and blogs and just kind of like threw them all on the page, and it just doesn't work on mobile very well. And it looks terrible on desktop. I don't know. I just confused. Like before, I didn't like the design that much, but at least I could find things. I'm just I don't understand the information architecture on the new site. But you are right. I'm not online every day trashing the Verge. I may find this a questionable redesign just today.
I mean, if there's a website you should probably trash it, maybe Craigslist.
Craigslist.
Just kidding.
I saw an article about that recently. He was interviewed, like Craig, whatever. He's not even really part of the company. Hasn't been since like actively. I think since a long time. But yeah, they're like basically. I think it's one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it scenarios. But yeah, that site. I mean,
I can actually appreciate the sort of like the Spartan, just like what, it is what it is.
Yeah, but so is it fair for us or for me to be like rag on the Verge when I find Craigslist perfectly acceptable, even though Craigslist is pretty objectively terrible aesthetically, but functionally it's great. So I guess I just put a certain kind of functionality ahead of aesthetic design, maybe, even though I think good design should be both. But I guess I must prioritize the functionality when I'm talking about web stuff.
The funniest thing is about Craigslist is that there is a weird intentionality of it to be committed to sort of like a Web 1.0 experience.
Web
right?
0.5.
Right? Yeah, right.
So,
like we're stuck in like the Netscape days and like
but it
IE4
works.
days.
It works though. I mean, but it could be better though. It could definitely.
It
be a lot
looks
better.
like it's kept together by duct tape and like
I imagine
servers in a closet somewhere.
I kind of imagine there's like a Gateway 2000 computer in a closet somewhere that's still running ancient Perl
that's
code.
the image it projected. I mean, let me, you know what? I should not trash it because it's been a while since I've been on Craigslist, and I'm actually talking about what I remember Craigslist to be.
Oh, you go on the Craigslist now?
Yeah. So like, for example, like nowadays, when I look at it, the font has changed to something cleaner, a little more
Nice.
like sans serif. It's still a little bit like because I haven't been on this page forever, like it dumps me into like this entire map of the United States, and then it takes me to where I want to go. So yeah, and the UI is not different. In fact, the page, because I'm on an iMac, the page does not conform responsively to my screen size. So it's just stuck in like as if it's like in a 720, 480 day. It's hilarious.
And I just went back to the Verge to see if they changed
Craigslist.
Yeah,
never change.
I'm on the Verge website, and it's still like it. I know what they're doing. I understand what they're doing on the Verge. I just don't know if it was the right move. But
I mean,
it's not my company, so
yeah. Again, like it depends on who this was designed for, right? Was it designed for consumers or was it designed for the advertisers, right? To bring more advertiser content in versus like, and then organize it in a way that makes them more because that's what drove me nuts about the original the prior Verge website. That and Polygon was just like, especially in mobile, it would just like take over my entire mobile screen with the ad and like, okay, I'm pressing the X button, but then it completely screws up the layout, and it's just like.
Although I will commend them though for saying explicitly they're trying to bring blogging back in some way. So
sure,
anyone trying to resurrect the vibrant blogging ecosystem we used to have is commendable, I think, because that was a great time in a lot of ways with all the blogs and they would connect to each other and the days before Twitter.
Well, I always think that these things come in cycles. To be honest, like it's like breakdancing or any kind of music genre. It's just or even fashion, right? Like for a while it dies or it goes into a nascent thing when corporations have nothing, don't want to put any money into it. But if a strong enough sub community forms because they love that genre so much, it has the potential to eventually rise again, like a phoenix.
Yeah,
with corporate money showering down, so that everybody can all benefit. And all of a sudden, blog is hip again, and whatever.
Also, it is the Verge is designed for you to sit on their page longer. Like that's our point. They're trying to grab stuff. So you're not going to social media. You're going to the Verge website and seeing the social media embedded in there, seeing the links to like Bloomberg articles, whatever in there, which I think is a little weird that you can kind of get away with that. When did you get? I don't know. I was thinking about it. I'm not sure how I feel about it because they're basically linking out to competitors, using the fact you might want to read their competitors as kind of a strength themselves. So it's kind of a cool move in that way. But also, aren't you kind of using someone else's copyrighted material? I guess that's the whole thing about like linking and snippets and fair use and that kind of thing. But yeah, so if you go to their page, there's these streams of content, and it's just a little confusing where it all comes from because I feel like the visual design's it's hard for me to parse. Like there's little tiny icons.
I mean, I guess the way you can kind of look at it is, as opposed to being sort of like pseudo, like oh yeah, this Twitter account, like Kotaku does this a lot, where they like write these medium-sized article about one tweet of some popular YouTuber or something like that, or doing something controversial with a video game, or saying something controversial about some cosplayer or something like that, and causing up some kind of storm, and that becomes a news item, right? So as opposed to sort of like pretending or even wasting staff resources on stuff like that, you just post it directly there because you can just embed it. Like, what's the point of trying to pretend like you're just pointing, you're just referring to something that's already existing and just writing some minor commentary about it.
Yeah, I mean, like half the posts on here are like they're kind of like tweets or commentary about other links by the Verge writers, and they're like embedded in this endlessly scroll. Well, not even endlessly, but just sort of extreme. I don't know, man.
I mean, it's genius in that sense, right? Yeah. Like it's not even pretending anymore.
No, I mean, I guess I'll get used to it. Maybe, I don't know. I found that the old Verge, I had a lot of problems with the old Verge design, but I got used to like spatially where things were and like what the top stories were. They're going to be up here in this block area, and then I can ignore most of the other stuff. So this just, I don't know. I don't like it that much, but I will let it grow on me, and maybe, like a rash, I'll just get used to it or something.
Oh, geez, don't get used to rashes.
Get that checked out. Rash. No, I don't know. I don't like it. A lot of people don't like it.
There's your title.
What? Rash.
The Verge is a rash.
The Verge is a rash. No, maybe I'll get used to it. I don't know. Yeah. In the meantime, I'm just I love RSS feeds, so that helps.
I get the sneaky suspicion that will come back in time.
I mean, I never stopped using RSS feeds,
but that's exactly the point. That has never left. It's just people's point of view about its popularity has sort of like dissipated in people's, but the technology is still there.
Oh, so maybe the Verge making this redesign that hurts my eyeballs. Maybe this was part of some plan to bring back RSS. So it's the only way to read the Verge now without your eyes hurting.
I mean, you can think of it as much more of a curated RSS. An RSS within an RSS.
True. Yeah, I haven't looked at what the feed looks like. Do they still have an RSS feed? I assume they do. But anyway, that's enough about the Verge.
Sure.
They don't care about my opinion.
So, yes. So we should probably bring an update on how we're doing on our have an awkward transition to how we're doing.
That's the only kind of transition we know. It's what people tune in for, the awkward transitions.
Yes, right. Exactly. Because we have plenty of them. Where we're at with our PickleJar app, which is a to-do list app / habit forming app, which apparently we need because we have not accomplished much of anything. Well, you have, Steve. So
I worked on the app a bit.
I worked like a small tidbit on the app, but we can kind of discuss from there. But let's, if you can let us know about how well you're doing, because you're doing a lot.
So I didn't get any UI done because I got bogged down on the core data stuff. Mm-hmm. So this whole thing, I've been learning a lot about core data because I'd never really used it before, and I've been running into the rough edges with SwiftUI. But I was doing the refactor about this a bit. So I
can I just mention how brave that is?
What?
And how interesting that is, that even though you've been doing iOS development for how long? Since it came out. Yeah, or close to it since it's come out. You have not touched core data.
Not much, no.
In any like direct sort of like this is your first personal project with core data.
I've just written a lot of my own persistence stuff.
But that speaks to like the sort of the depth of how much work you can do in iOS development in general and still not touch what some people might consider a core experience of learning iOS development.
Yeah, so I mean, I've just done a lot of persist the objects, and I wrote my own like persistence layers which store the stuff on the file system, and then bring it back up. But the problem with that, of course, is it has to bring everything up in memory. But the amount of data I was working with, especially over the years as the phones have gotten better, it wasn't much. So it really wasn't that necessary. But now I've gotten to the point where there's so many features and so many like different kinds of models to persist and stuff that it's probably best to convert things to core data in a future update because it's hard to manage all the data after a while. But at first, for years, I mean, it was fine. We had lots of discrete pieces of data. They were coming from like certain API calls. It really didn't make a lot of sense at the time to go through the effort. And remember, core data like 10 years ago was little more difficult to work with.
A little.
Yeah, so so we're like, is it worth doing this and then worrying about it, because we don't really need it. We're just downloading some JSON and storing it in a cache, and then so it made sense for that. But you're right, you don't need to use every aspect, even some of the core stuff like this, all the time. But it's not like I've never used databases or other kinds of persistence frameworks before. So core data has its quirks, but it's not like incomprehensible or anything. It's actually pretty straightforward once you just look at the like make a model and start querying it. The rough edges come in right now with how things from core data just are slightly different types than what you want to use in Swift, especially Swift UI. So especially optionals. So my thing was, I did some refactoring. I based on that practical core data book. So I updated at least one of our views to just use the fetch results wrappers to get the data. The other thing was, wanted to be able to save data, and I updated it so that I updated the goal view. So we have one goal view. It's called an edit goal view, and it works for creating new goals, and it should work for editing them. Although I didn't have time to hook up the UI. And the way
is that something you can define as a state of like this is or some kind of way to identify like this is edit versus add?
Yeah. So I think it's whether you put in a goal. So I set it up so that you have there's a view model that you use, and the view model is set up. If you put in a goal as a source, then you're editing it, and if you don't, you just have to give it a context, and then you're creating a new one. And internally, it'll detect that and then create a new one. And it just gives you one place to do all this stuff, and then the edit view can be reused to make either one if you want to. It's not that, or you can reuse the view model at the very least. If you don't want to use the view, but I hooked that up, and so that was not working because core data vends optionals. So even for like string optionals, like the simplest thing I needed to do was to create a goal with a title and a description and save it. That's two optional strings, but we're trying to bind this stuff to text fields, which require non-optionals bindings in SwiftUI. So it's like, okay, what I wanted to do was I wanted to bind directly to the manage object property because it makes things more straightforward. Otherwise, what we were doing was we were creating like state objects and stuff inside the view, and then you'd have to take those and then pass them into maybe some method or something to actually then do the translation into creating a managed object. And it's like, well, Apple went to all this effort to make managed objects from core data observable for this very reason, so you can use them directly in SwiftUI. Or observable objects, right? Right. So I wanted, and it just wouldn't work. And I was like, okay, how come this doesn't work? And there's a really simple extension I wrote that I also got from this book, but a lot of people have created the same extension that will just, allow you to. I created like a little extension like with default, and so you can give it whatever the default is of whatever type, and then it should use it if there's, if it needs to, so that if there's no data coming back, so it would, be able to just set it as like an empty string. So because I was just trying to get the view to work, and I was like, I just need to bind to this thing and give it an empty string, so that it'll work at first when there's no data coming in there. And it should have worked, but it just wouldn't. It would just not update. And it turns out I was missing a publish wrapper that Aaron found. And I was looking at this for days, and I was like, "What the hell is wrong with this?" And Aaron looked at it, and I think you looked at it more than once. So we're blind to it until Aaron finally figured it out last night. I was like, "Oh, yeah, obviously." And what's funny is the sample code I was working with, I was basing this on, doesn't have it in there either. And my mental model of how combine works, I guess, is not great, because I guess I was thinking of it like it was a pointer. So why would I need to have a publish thing? I wasn't understanding exactly what's happening with the bindings and SwiftUI. So my mental model was wrong, so it didn't pick up on it. And I was trying to figure out how to debug it, and I couldn't figure out how do I even see what's happening with this, You know what I mean? I don't know, Aaron. Did you have any? Did you do anything special to debug it, or just look at the code until it came to you?
I was trying a bunch of things with the code and like adding print statements to your extension to see, or breakpoints and things like that. I was like, what is it doing? And it was only ever hitting the default
that's
value.
what I saw too. Yeah.
And because what it would do is you would try to type something in, and it would like put one character and then it would reset to the default value. And I was like, well, let's see, how would I get this to work? I was like, well, it needs like a state thing that's published.
Yeah.
And that worked. Like basically I passed this thing into another thing. When it changed, when that thing, the core data object changed, I would set a state thing in the view model. I was like, all right, I could just, what that's doing is like publishing changes. So I was like, I forgot. And then I saw your thing, your goal core data object wasn't being published. And I was like, oh, that's what it's missing. And
sometimes it's just completely ridiculous, stupid things that are up there, which is why you have like, pull requests and other people look at code, because this happens in the day job too, where there have been plenty of times where maybe someone else has an issue and they're like banging their heads and I'll look at it, it's like, oh, it's just this one line thing you need to change, or vice versa, just like today. This happens all the time in the real world. If you're banging your head on something, it's often best to just like maybe see if a colleague can look at it, because you can be blind to really obvious things. And I feel like, especially with the Swift UI stuff, if you're not in it, not in it as much, I've only been really working with it a lot this last months. Really, it's still not a big thing in my day job right now, because it's a lot of legacy code. But since I'm not used to it, I don't have all the intuitions that I do have with other kinds of code.
Yeah, what's really funny, or what's really weird with Swift UI, because we come from UIKit and sort of like the MVC, MVVM background, and I think, Swift UI is such a weird, it's its own unique beast. I mean, it's reactive, but it's also very static in some ways. But understanding that kind of mental model is like, it took me a while to like really like it's easy to grok in the beginning, the basics, but like if you're just trying to do something complex, certainly with views interacting with each other and updating each other's data model, I think that sort of like starts to like, you're used to like delegates or some way of communicating that's not necessarily in the old UIKit world of like, there's sort of like this stream of like flow that you can kind of like you have to break before you can kind of get comfortable in Swift UI, coming from UIKit.
Yeah, I was thinking the other thing of this, the stuff with combine, how Swift UI uses combine in the background and tries to like hide all of it, all the like messy stuff with combine from you, but it's still there, and you sort of have to know how some of that stuff works. So if you've never touched combine until
I haven't touched combine
Switch yet. So it's like a good idea to like mess around with some of that stuff directly to see how that works.
I mean, it's weird because like combine by itself is relatively straightforward, but like the implementation and then understanding.
Right, yeah, it's just like that it's kind of a lot of setup code.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
So, and then Swift UI hides all that, like generates all the publishers and things and everything for you with just like a few property wrappers.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that's the thing about property wrappers, man. Like, I mean, I like the idea of property wrappers because it makes your code look really clean and they give you all this functionality, but man, it hides potentially a lot of complexity, and that you have to, really think about it when you're using them. But it's a good feature. It really does save time. The thing about all this stuff is once you grok the mental models, there really is a big savings in just amount of boilerplate code you need to write, especially for linking things together, which is the part you can easily mess up.
Yeah, and I think it's actually kind of like, from my experience with Swift UI, I mean, I get that it's always this constant battle with like the weird 10% pain areas of like things that shouldn't be painful are painful, and I get that point, but
it's like it's like crossing the barrier. It's like when you have to do something outside of Swift UI, then that's where it gets difficult.
Yeah, the way I wrote stuff in the past, like I have notifications that get fired, and then that's like how I know to update tables and things like that. Like the data will download, and then once it's persisted in my own layer, I'll throw notifications about it, and then you can. And it's a straightforward pattern, but it's a lot of boilerplate code because then you have to subscribe and handle that, and then you have to unwrap, get the user info, get the keys that I defined to get the right data out of it and know what to do. And so like all of that boilerplate code I wrote many years ago to do this persistence without a database, and it just, once you understand what's going on with like core data and Swift UI especially, it's just so much easier. As basically we got like a goal that I can save and edit and view. I can do all this with very little code. Like I don't have to debug some complicated persistence store that I made, or check for notification center notifications and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean the other thing too is like, and it's a good like indicator, like if you see like if your line of code is anywhere past 300, it's usually a smell of like, oh, maybe this needs to be refactored, or at least move some of that stuff you can like compact and move to a different file to keep it clean. I
like how compact the views are getting with the refactor, especially with the view model for editing stuff. That does make it pretty simple.
I mean, I had heard arguments like what ends up happening a lot is opposed to like massive view controller.
Yeah,
you have massive view models now.
Yeah, so that's why we're splitting it. So we're using the fetch results, the wrappers, and that allows us to take advantage of what Apple already built for integrating with core data, and then when we need to edit things, creating stuff with a child context means that we just have this view we can bring up as a modal or whatever you want, and you can just drop it if you cancel. It just makes it simple. Like you don't have to worry about it polluting your context or your anything. You need to worry about like half created objects sitting around in memory or whatever. That's the main advantage of it, and you can just cancel and just throw it all away. And otherwise, you persist it, and what my little view model does is it just persists to the child context and then saves to the parent, which is going to be the view context. And everything seems to work so far. So I can build more views using this pattern.
All right. So speaking of views, I realized like my mental capacity, because we do Swift UI like 8 hours of the day, and then trying to like get my brain to like commit more time to it is the tough part about a side project where the project is the same thing, is the same technology. So one of the things that I've been beginning to start to like look into and start working on is just getting the layouts done, like just wiping that slate clean and making sure that when you and Aaron want to work on wiring things up cleanly, there be these layouts in place for you to go and just do.
You talking about in Swift UI or in Sketch?
In Swift UI.
Okay.
So take the sketch files that I've done so far and then migrate them over to.
Because that's what I was basing. I mean, I don't have anything to show, but that's what I was basing on. I was looking at the sketch. But you're saying you started actually building the layouts?
Yeah, the onboarding, the card view. Like I'm beginning to start to like just put all of them in, or try to start putting them all in, so that you have something to play with versus like just making like a placeholder screen, or like just to test ideas out, or just test the editing feature. Like it's the actual view.
That's what I wanted to do next. I wanted to have like one of the sketch views implemented.
Yeah, so that's my goal going for this to sort of like catch us back up somewhere, because we're behind schedule, and that's a lot of it's on myself.
I mean, that happens too with side projects. But yeah, if you get any of those views like working, then I can play around with figuring out how to hook it up, and then that'll be good. And see, that's the thing about Swift UI, which is nice. I think it's based on even my more limited experience you guys have. It does seem like it's easier to do that kind of separation of concerns a bit. I mean, I guess if you're using storyboards, you could do it, but I didn't really use storyboards much, so I was always doing it by code, by hand, like setting up the views and things. it does seem like you can more easily separate these concerns to a point. And even if you make a bunch of state objects or something that I want to replace, it's like, well, I know what they are. That's what's nice. Like I can look at the Swift UI view and say, here's all the actual state. It's not hidden behind a whole bunch of UI kit stuff. It's not like I have to make sure that I've properly that we've come to an agreement about a pattern for instance, how to structure our view controllers so we can find the UI update code and that kind of thing. No, it's always going to be there. I can see the state that's going to be manipulated, and then a lot of the other stuff I can kind of ignore as long as I, if I'm refactoring things, I rename stuff properly.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I find Swift UI is really tremendous about for the past 2-3 years of working with it is just this, like, you can just build things quickly and refactor quickly.
I mean, theoretically, we're not a good example of that.
No, not at the moment, but I think that's much more of like circumstantial, with summertime, work related stuff and other. I mean,
it's tough
scenarios.
because I had iOS. I mean, iOS 16 wasn't that bad this year, but like there's a lot of stuff that happens in the summer that you get exhausted. You're just tired.
And sometimes Apple throws you a curveball, of like 6.1 has that dynamic island API now.
Oh, this is another transition, guys.
This is another transition. Poorly done.
Because Aaron doesn't have any update, except he fixed a bug. So that was his big contribution.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which was actually huge. So it was a very important contribution though, because now we can actually save data again properly.
Yep.
Okay, so transitioning to the curveball, the dynamic island. Which is, do you guys think that name's terrible? First off, because everybody keeps saying it's a terrible name.
I don't care.
I'm like, I don't care either.
I think people get like caught up with like unnecessary things.
Every review was like the dynamic island. It's a terrible name, but it's a cool feature. I'm like, okay.
I mean, if it's so terrible, don't say it.
Yeah, I know. It's like I don't know what else to call it.
Call it DI. Call it whatever you want to call it.
I call it the Gilligan's Dynamic Island.
Yeah, like you can have fun with it.
But yeah, it's that feature that's on the Pro models this year that with the little cutout where they'll use the OLED screen to black out pixels between the cutouts and around them to create a pill shape that is, when indoor daylight, looks basically, as far as I can tell, completely black, except for, I guess, you could see the lens maybe a little bit. But then you can interact with it. So certain kinds of notifications go in there. You can long press to bring up like a mini controls for things like music or a timer. If you tap it, it'll open the app, which a lot of reviewers think is backwards. I don't know. I see it both ways. And then it has these really cool animations, and you access it through, I guess, the Live Activities API.
Is that right, Aaron? You've had more.
Yeah, I've just seen like a little bit of code, and it looked like the one thing I've seen is that it's like another output view for a live activity widget, which is like another kind of widget. So it's just like a widget kind of widget layout.
Right. So in our context, maybe we might have, for example, when it's in this very compact default mode, we might have like the number of to-dos, right? Of how many to-dos we have for today. You tap on it or you long tap it or whatever. It gets a live activity. Maybe you have like a grid of all the activities all the goals that we want to do for the day, as an example of like what we might consider doing for our app. And then tap into one of them, gets you into that to-do item or the goal, for which then you can say whether you did it or you didn't do it. Or maybe you can create a graph, right, of like your progress for the day, for the week, as an idea of things we can do with that dynamic island.
Wait, how's the dynamic island make stuff? Isn't this more like a notification zone?
It can be, depending on, but it could also be like a way for you to identify. It's almost like a way for you to provide very simple functionality or very simple, I guess you can say, notifications of like, for example, if you put a music player right on, you play something on Apple Music and then you go put it back in Dynamic Island, you can then kind of see its state of like if it's playing or what it's playing, and then maybe you long tap and then you get the album art plus maybe like some player controls.
Right. I didn't know we had. How do you get it in the? How would we get our app into the island? It doesn't have to be an active.
It has to have a live activity widget.
What's the live activity widget for us?
Well, that's what I mean in terms of as an example. Yeah. I think even like Overcast has something like that right now. Live
well, Overcast
widget.
also has the background, playing of audio. So I'm sure we can figure out something. Sure. But I also saw some examples on the internets of people playing around with it. I really like the Apollo implementation, which is a little animal thing that walks around the edge, and does, like a Tamagotchi thing.
Even that, I don't think they need to even bother with the dynamic API.
No, actually. I don't think so. I think it's just when you're in the app, it just you can tell, I guess, where the actual cutout is. And so I want that to be part of Aaron mode, where we have a little mini Aaron who just stands there looking disapprovingly at us at your task list, your goals, and you're like, no. And then I think I said this. I
thought Aaron just wanted speed mode, right? It was just like, you're not even seeing any of this because it's done.
But this is the Easter egg if we ever get this done. And I want the Aaron mode version of the little Aaron to do stuff on the dynamic island. So I want him to like go fishing. I want him to like play Frisbee by himself or something, and I want him to like train in martial arts and become like Super Saiyan.
You
like
do
Goku.
Realize none of these things is what Aaron does on the regular.
I know, but it's gonna be funny.
Physical activities.
Like imagine how awesome this would be. And then once in a while, I want him to like go Super Saiyan and do a Kamehameha and like blow up one of our log entries or something when you're on that screen. Like it'll come back, but I think it'll be funny.
This feels like one of those like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. But it'd have to be like one of those things where you have to do something in order to get into that special mode, I think, because it sounds. You
have to pay us money. Pay us more money. You get Aaron mode.
But I actually thought that was pretty clever, though. So you can use the live activities for the legitimate use of Dynamic Island, or you can kind of play around with the fact that you have this little cutout area that you can identify. I don't know how they identified it, but you can identify it, and then you can potentially do things, pin things to it or around it, or I don't know how useful that is, but you can do playful stuff at least.
Is there a way to identify?
Well, they had to figure out somehow for their thing to work.
I mean, you could technically maybe do like a device or
I don't know.
Resolution.
I don't know how to look it up. I'm sure someone listening knows, but I just got the latest beta with the stuff in it installed, so I didn't have a chance to run it yet.
I mean, it kind of goes back to one of the things that I've been noticing personally about where app design is going or should be going, for that matter. If you're building an app, a lot of times, like a lot of these wireframes that we've built are primarily focused on inside the app versus like what happens when a user goes outside the app. It doesn't care to bother interacting with your app anymore, right? How do you get them to re-engage with your app? And it can come in a variety of different ways, whether through widgets, dynamic island. You have to create these entry points and sneak them in a way into the system in ways that is useful to the user, but also reminds the user that they have your app. Versus like, I don't know, trying to come up with the most elegant, beautiful app in the world that wins design awards, and then nobody bothers with them because they're you're out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, this is the Dynamic Island gives you a new kind of multitasking for certain things.
Sure.
I think that's the main thing.
Yeah. And the one I forgot about the one technical thing or limitation for Dynamic Island, which is like comes from the Live Activities API, is you can't send more than 4 kilobytes of data in an update.
Okay,
because it's supposed to come from a push notification. You can fake it from your app, but it still can only be 4 kilobytes of data. So that's like the kind of just like a few lines of text or something. You can't send any big giant fancy stuff.
So I'm not clear exactly how we might use it, but I want to try to use it. Dynamic Island.
How is Apple sending their album art?
I don't know. Maybe they're just sending some kind of URL that loads
because
load
that makes sense.
That's how you do the. I think that's how you do some of the push notification image stuff. It's a link, not the actual binary.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's for like the updates, like because you can like update it every second if you really wanted to, but you can only with this really small amount of data.
Most of what this app does though is not like that small of a time scale.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how useful the dynamic island is for us, but
yeah, it's at least when they first launched Activity Kit, they were talking about it's for things or whatever besides the music player, things like that. It's for things that are like timely, like deliveries and your Uber is coming or whatever. It's going to happen within an hour
when your goals should be done.
See, I was like thinking about that, but that's basically like a push notification or a local notification, and that still exists. That's still a thing. It doesn't get taken over by Dynamic Island. So I'm not sure. We have to look at the API and see how much we might be able to use it, but I think it would be cool to.
I mean, it'd be the kind of thing that's very subtle. Like it's not.
You can't just like put it up there and like not have it update, right? You don't have to update it every second.
Okay.
It's just like you can just put it up there, and it lives for as long as, at least I haven't done the dynamic island version, but the live activity just lives on the lock screen until the user dismisses it.
I mean, on some level,
and it's like I think there's a limit of like 12 hours before it like automatically gets dismissed. So assuming the user would probably dismiss it before then.
Yeah. There's definitely some lock screen widgets you can do at the very least.
Like, that's the lock screen widgets is another thing.
Yeah,
that would probably be more useful for us.
I mean, you can tap to. Yeah, I think they'll be the more useful thing, but I still want to find some excuse to do something with it.
You could definitely find some reason to.
We'll find some reason to do it, but as far as the most useful APIs that came out of iOS 16 for like widget stuff, it's going to be the lock screen widget. It's going to be the most obviously useful. Button to obviously one to open up the app, just launch it. A lot of people have done launch buttons. But mainly some kind of view to show maybe your position, your sprint, your next goal, or whatever you want. Pin a goal.
The live activity stuff is useful. It just might not be that useful for us for our.
Oh
app.
Yeah. So. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it depends on how we evolve the app. But yeah, some of the stuff is more like small time scale.
And you can really like take over the screen with a big large lock screen widget that's like larger than any of the regular.
I feel like that's the
standard lock screen widgets.
That would be the kind of thing that we would. It's the kind of thing like if you're a development team, and certainly if you're one with not that much resources in general, that would be the kind of thing you push off to like next year. Would be the smart thing.
Oh yeah. Well, we should probably have the main UI working.
Yeah.
if you have like the data thing, it's like it's not too hard to implement a live activity widget.
Yeah.
Especially if you have widgets set up already. Because
right.
Oh, speaking of the data thing, I guess at some point we probably want to take some of our data model stuff and put it into a
package.
Put into a package. I was going to look into that too. But this all shouldn't matter as doing the development. It shouldn't really affect anything. Be able to do it as a refactor. But that might be useful because we do want to do something like live activity or widgets or something. We need to share certain things, right? So it's not a good way of doing it.
Yeah. So. Plus, we're trying to learn a lot.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I just want to do all this stuff as an example, like even if it's a little unnecessary.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason why I was spending so much time on how do I do this simple stuff with core data, because I was like, well, I mean, this is it's just a learning experience more than anything else. So I learned. So like for the core data stuff, I've done like the very standard core data. First time you look at a book's core data. I've done like the Apple way of core data with Swift UI. I've done like a view model based approach. I've done like this modified, cleaner version of both of those now. Just looking at different ways of structuring, the interaction between the two systems. So that's cool. And I've read a whole bunch about core data and the models and the features that are in there and the stuff we haven't even used yet. It's very cool. There's a lot. Core data has a lot of stuff in it.
I mean, I'm still debating on whether or not I like to save images as a transformable versus a binary. I've done both. I think it's just a question of like how you want that translated quickly.
I don't know. Can you do one? Can you do one? I know now we're getting way off topic, but can we do one property that can handle both like a SF symbol and some image? Like I don't know how, or does it
like
have to be
string
different,
or like some kind of like for a URL?
Yeah,
for example.
I mean, I guess it has to be some kind of multiple properties.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just kind of want. I would like the model to be simple and not, but it may not be able to be that simple. But I've seen things where you can add an emoji, you can add like a emoji, you can add maybe a symbol.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want. That's what I want to be able to do. Like all those things, because it feels like that stuff is, I mean, mostly representable by strings. It's just I don't know how it works. Like, how does it work in like for context, right? Can't you do like an emoji and an image?
I mean, you could save as a base 64, but if it's small enough, I think it might be okay. I don't know. I'm sure somebody's screaming at me right now about that idea.
Yeah, if you're bringing in an image, you might have to process it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But I mean, what I would probably do is like shrink it to a certain size of like, but because it's just an avatar. But you never know. Because like if it's just if all I care about is just it being an avatar, I could probably shrink it to a very small size PNG and save that. But if it's something that I intend to like go full screen on, or like make it a large, expose a larger version of that, then maybe I might have to reconsider. Well, considering that we're also in the background saving it to the iCloud system.
Oh, right. That's another good point. What do we need to do for that?
Nothing much. I mean, just reset the database environment, and then you're good to go.
If you save an image, does the image go into CloudKit? I would guess.
Yes,
it'd have to, right? So does it go into Cloud? So you can just do a binary. What if you did an image? If you did a link, I mean, where's the image stored? Just in your.
It would have to be stored locally in your documents folder,
and then that gets synced.
That link will get synced, but say, for example, the person deletes the app or something like that.
But how do you get the image synced? That's what I'm saying. Because that's what you want. You need the image to sync between devices too.
Right.
What's the simplest way of doing that? Because
you would save it as a binary or transformable.
Yeah, so we might have to do that because I forgot. It's not that I forgot, but the genius of how they did the CloudKit integration with core data is that it's almost exactly the same APIs and stuff. It's pretty much the same APIs, just a slightly different setup when you set up the core data stack.
Don't do anything cute.
Fine. Yeah. So, but that means while you're working in it, it's easy to forget that it's actually syncing up the core data, unless you look at the console with all the messages coming through.
What's funny is like you still want to maintain, like when you do SQL database model design, you get into a habit of like overly normalizing something. Whereas CloudKit, because I think it's NoSQL in the back end, like as an implementation point of view, they would rather you have it as a flat, like as flat as possible.
And with core data, even I think you're not supposed to treat it like a database, so you don't want to overly normalize it like you might with a database. And sometimes it makes sense to flatten out a data structure and have like a computed property or something on there. And I was reading about the ways you can do that in core data, which is pretty clever. I didn't know that you could do that kind of stuff where you can have there's like a way to tell core data to compute like a property, like go ahead and like count up this stuff and then assign it to this property so it just looks like it's available as like an integer or something. Like stuff like that is very clever, and that's where a lot of the power for the more like slightly more advanced use cases comes from. And that's the kind of thing I've done before in like legit databases. Sometimes you have to do that because you don't want to be doing these big joins and stuff. And when you're dealing with core data and you don't really know, unless you go into the debugging tools, I guess you don't really know upfront what it's going to do with the SQL.
I'm embarrassed to say I've done some pretty shameful things with stored procedures.
Oh yeah,
very shameful. Shameful things.
I mean, on mobile or just in general.
I mean, for SQL Server, that was like,
SQL Server. We have oh my god, we have so many Oracle and SQL Server stored procedures at work. So many, and most of them are not written by me, but I have occasionally had to do one.
Like anybody who knows. Like,
it's awful.
That's horrible.
Building a stored procedure is also not easy to do if you're not doing it all the time. You don't have the environment set up for it. I was like, I don't like writing those things at all. And I had a whole database class with using Oracle to build this stuff and built like these elaborate programs with multiple layers of stored procedures and stuff. It was.
I forgot what they called the functions. Was it just called functions? I forgot what it was.
Man, I
just remember there was like you could do things. You can do calculated like. You can like instead of doing all this complicated join and maybe have like different tables. You just want to bring one table and you want to do like this massive join and then maybe some calculated values from that join, and then spit out
a view.
To the back. Oh, there was a view, right? But then there was something else where like you were doing like a variety of different things that you had to do initial processing for, and then spit out the final result.
Databases are way more complicated and have way more functionality than maybe you might realize if you haven't looked into it. But that's why there's experts.
They should not be.
Well, that's why you gotta. That's why there's database administrators and database developers build that stuff because But we are the only developers in this case, and so we're just gonna try to keep things. We're gonna try to keep things simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever works, because whatever works. That's the simplest thing.
We are bumping up to time.
Yes, we are. We're out of time.
So,
as usual.
We had all this other stuff to talk about, but we'll save that for next week or next podcast, I should say. So. With that being said, that's all we have for today. You can learn more about Philly Cocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you'll find links to our Slack, meetup schedule, and contact info. If you feel generous, please leave a review on iTunes and share us with all your developer friends. And one more thing. Perl, the only language that looks the same before and after RSA encryption. Till next time. Good luck on your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always. Developer Highway to Heck.